actions, don't they?
Yeah, if you do.
So the actions have got to agree on ESR, briefing, and anything else?
From there, refer members page 29 for.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to go back into open session, yes. So thank you to the Bill, Clerk, Stephen, who gave us a useful briefing in closed session there. So members, at page 29 of the table pack, there's correspondence from the Economy Committee. The Economy Committee has responded to the committee's call for evidence for the bill, outlining its evidence and gathering deliberations, its evidence gathering and its deliberations in this regard. After considerations of both oral and written evidence, the Economy Committee has indicated its support for the relevant clauses within the bill which address issues for Tourism NI and the Department of Economy itself. So members, we're going to add that to the committee's response to the evidence base for the committee stage of the bill, which will be added to the electronic bill folder for people to peruse as we continue in due course. I also am going to summarise our agreement to seek an oral briefing from the examiner of statutory rules per delegated powers.
Or not.
We don't need an oral briefing, is that that's what we agreed? Okay, that's precisely the opposite of what I thought I was agreeing.
Just to remind members that the committee has agreed not to seek a briefing on the Fiscal Council from the ESR because she has indicated she's content with the delegated powers therein.
Yeah. And we also agreed to get a briefing from the OECD.
Yes, seek a briefing from them.
On the Fiscal Council bill.
And Chair to look at their response in a session next week.
Yeah.
Closed session next week.
In closed session next week?
Yes.
Yep, okay. We also... So we're okay. Then we have the Administrative Financial Provisions Bill, and we are going to get legal advice, our own legal advice, on Clause 20 of the Administrative Financial Provisions Bill.
Yes.
Okay. Members are content with all those things.
To page 4.
Yeah. So, members, we are now going into matters arising. So, yeah, first one is 5.1, which is a summary of the DALO readout responses. Which I'm going to run through now. 5.2 is a DALO readout response to the dilapidation bill, which is page 21. We asked the Department of LPS at any particular locus in relation to the dilapidation bill. The Department has indicated there is no direct statutory linkage, but if via the dilapidation bill, the new powers and obligations created bring more buildings out of dilapidation, they obviously will go into the rating system, and hopefully there will be a benefit effect for the rates base. I suppose it would be helpful to understand whether either the department, we don't need to necessarily ask now, but whether they have done any modelling of that, whether they think it'll be material. I don't think that would be a completely impossible thing for them to do, as in whether they believe that the powers in this will move enough properties out of dilapidation and therefore back into being rateable and subject to rates, that there would be some kind of, if they could actually model the amount. Anyway, I think it's one for us to ask at a later date, perhaps. Okay, so that's to note this agreement and indicate a nil return to the ERA Committee's call for evidence in the dilapidation bill. But I think if we could flag to them that it might be worth them asking whether they anticipate any positive revenue effect, or if the department has modelled any work on positive revenue effect.
Chair, members are content we can put that through on our DALO reader.
Yeah, I think it's worth doing.
Now, just to see
I think it's worth doing because they've posited as a potential benefit, but I think it's worth seeing if there's any. If they haven't done the modelling, I'm not suggesting they go out and procure that work, but I think it's just worth, if they have a specific number, they might be able to tell us it. 5.3 is departmental reserve claims, page 22 of the meeting pack. The committee asked the department if it was aware of any other departments which are going to make reserve claims. The department indicates no further requests to access the reserve have been made. Should additional exceptional costs materialise, further requests may be submitted for consideration. So that's to note, unless I think Deputy Chair and then Brian, Deputy Chair Diane.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask if we could maybe seek some more clarity around this in terms of the police compensation, in terms of what the ramifications would be for this for future years.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Okay, Brian.
And in terms of the bill, the Magdalen Laundry, or the Mother and Baby Institution, Magdalen Laundries and Workhouses, and the redress scheme for that, I mean, has any approach been made to Treasury to help cover the costs for that? And some of the years of operations was under direct rule, and just the cost would be significant for the block grant. So I know it's TEO was leading on that, but I was on TEO committee until recently, and that was a question which was not clear to the members of the committee.
I think we've effectively got the answer that no reserve claim. If they're telling us now that no reserve claim is made, we can assume that that includes TO and those specific bills. But we can certainly ask the department whether they are engaging with TO on those bits of legislation and whether they anticipate a reserve claim having to be made. And obviously we are taking evidence in a moment or two on departmental 5-year plans, and this is the kind of thing that one would assume TO would need to be factored in if it's going to be a material increase in TO's budget in terms of redress schemes. So I think they may not have that detail in terms of oral evidence now, but we can certainly ask the department if they are planning for it. Everyone else happy? Okay, grand. Now 5.4 is around the A5 judgment and the October monitoring round. That is at page 23 of the meeting pack. So, committee sought the most up-to-date position in relation to both reduced requirements and reallocation of monies given the A5 court judgment and clarity over timing of an October monitoring round. The department indicates the Finance Minister is currently considering the timing and scope of the next monitoring round, and a copy of any commissioning note will be provided to the committee in the usual way. Also, it will be a matter for DFI to determine the level of any reduced requirements from the 90 million in capital funding earmarked for the A5 Western Transport Corridor. Just one question I have in the Clerk. The money in the 25-26 budget is 181 million. I don't know if some of that is from is Irish government money or...
Yeah, that's not all just local allocation.
So the 90 million is the local allocation?
There was more than that. There was
102.
20, was it 22 million?
12 surrendered in the June monitoring.
Yeah.
So it was reduced, but it was what was budgeted for in the original budget this year for 25-26.
If everything had gone well.
As everything was 181. That's now down to 90. The outstanding amount that is still currently committed is 90. I know some was surrendered in June, but okay. We can ask. We might be able to ask officials about this today, but
we'll also flag up this.
yeah. Okay. So members, if members are agreed, we will update other statutory committees with regard to the October monitoring round because it's in everyone's interest, and the infrastructure committee in relation to the A5. I personally think it's quite concerning that we don't yet know when that it is going to be an underspend, and I would hope that there's some effort made to reallocate it, because if it's capital and we won't be able to switch it from capital to current, it'll kind of need to be allocated fairly soon because we're halfway through the financial year. Okay. The next is 5.5, which is readout response on the Chief Scientific and Technology Officer. That's at page 24. We asked how the Chief Scientific and Technology Officer's time is divided up. The department indicated to us somewhat tersely that it's not a matter for them, that it's a matter for the Executive Office. So I think we can leave it at that, unless anybody particularly wants to pursue that for now. We can ask that question. Members can ask that question themselves in their own capacity. Members' content will note it. The next agenda item is 5.6, which is so it's at page 25, and that is presentation of bids and allocations for monitoring rounds. The committee previously welcomed the provision of a comparative table of June monitoring round bids and allocations and asked that such a table is provided for each monitoring round statement. The department has noted that, and they are going to use that for future monitoring rounds. So that's to note, and that's helpful. They're doing that. 5.7 is readout response on city and growth deals. The committee requested, this is page 26, the committee requested an update on the alternative gondola project. I'm not sure that's the official title, the alternative gondola project. That sounds like a prog rock album or something, but in any case, in Morning Down District, the department has indicated that the council is continuing to consider an alternative project. Engagement is ongoing, and that an alternative will be presented to the Belfast Region City Deal Board in the coming months. Once the board agrees, an outline business case will need to be developed and submitted to the relevant accountable department. A proposal will then be brought to the delivery board and executive. So I suppose their position is that the money is not lost, but they are working on an alternative. Do you know if anybody wishes to comment on that? Did you get up type of
Yeah,
change?
it would be useful to know because I have got conflicting information both sides of this as to what the expectation level is, because obviously the Mourne Mountain Gateway project has £30 million of Treasury funding through the City deal, and it has to be delivered and completed within like the next 5 years. So any proposal that would be coming to the board would need to be delivered within that period of time. And from the Economy Minister and from the Finance Minister, they seem to be of the view that this is well advanced, but I know from the other side that they're still sitting brainstorming ideas in council. There's no full proposals, there's no appraisals, and I would be really concerned that the department is expecting like a fully developed proposal to land on their desk this month to enable it to be delivered, whereas I don't think that's the understanding on the other side of this, so I do believe the money is very much at risk.
So I suppose what we can ask for is more specificity on the phrase, on the phrase coming months, because it'll be 4 years since the deal was signed in a couple of months, and coming months could obviously mean 12 or many,
I
or
was
50.
told October. I can't remember if it, Chair, if it
this
was
month,
through the minister
Okay.
or through correspondence or which way I got it. But I was of the understanding that they were expecting something at the board in October, and it's my understanding that the council does not have an agreed, never mind developed proposal.
Okay, well I think we can, to ensure that, I think there's a level of public interest in this, we can probably ask the council, the department to give us this. We could also ask the council if they wanted to put it in the record for us where their discussions are. I don't know if members are content with that. Simply because we think it's important to get clarity for people on this is a level of public interest on this particular money, and to ensure that it isn't lost. There's always been a lot of commentary about the one particular project, or the particular project didn't proceed, and then another version of it didn't proceed in another part of the district. So I think we can ask both of those if people are content to give us their clarity on when they believe they need to come up with an alternative usage for this money. Steve Aiken, want to come in?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just to follow up from what the Deputy Chair was saying, was my understanding that there was a timeline, and talking to other people who are part of the City Deals bid, they've been told that the window is just about shut. So I don't understand how they're being able to be said that they've got time to resubmit a bid and push it in and it's going to be agreed. I think there's a real time pressure here, and I don't really understand what the briefing we've been given. I don't think it really ties in with what I've been told, and indeed what some of the local councils who are also involved have been told.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we just need to get clarity, which we'll do, on timing and when they expect to have an updated proposal. Okay, we'll do that. Next is 5.8, which is a Dallow readout response on the Administrative and Financial Provisions Bill response. We had forwarded correspondence from the Children's Commission in relation to the bill to the Department for comment on the proposal that a screening exercise should be undertaken on relevant clauses of the Administrative and Financial Provisions Bill to ascertain any impact on children's rights. For each of the clauses where this occurs, the Department has provided a response indicating that, respectively, for Clause 3, DFI determined that it would not be proportionate to complete a full child right assessment. For Clause 7, TO determined that a child's rights assessment is not applicable at this point. And for Clause 9, a full child's rights impact assessment has been published on the TO website. So members, I'm broadly content with this response. If members are content, we'll copy the Department's response to the Children's Commissioner, and also copy both the Commissioner's original correspondence and the Department's response to the TO and Economy Committees for their consideration. People content with that? Right. The departmental response will also be added to the evidence base for the bill, included in the electronic bill folder and included in the committee report in due course. 5.9, is a Dallow readout response on civil service advertising policy. That's at page 88. Some members voiced concerns about the changes to NIC's job advertising policy. These were communicated to the department, and clarity was sought over the flexible approach to recruitment, i.e. the removal of the requirement to publish it in the 3 daily newspapers, agreed by the executive. The department has reiterated its rationale for the change, indicating that this will help widen the potential applicant pool for civil service recruitment opportunities and help deliver better value for money in recruitment advertising spend. And they go on to explain, it's all in the correspondence there, it says that the Section 75 screening did not indicate any adverse impact on Section 75 groupings, including age and disability. I find that slightly strange in the age one, but that's they've done their assessment. That's what they think. The rural needs impact assessment identified potential minor impacts on rural dwellers, but concluded these would be mitigated by the significant and ongoing improvement to digital connectivity across the jurisdiction. The department also pointed out the policy approach is reflective of other civil service jurisdictions and public sector employees in Northern Ireland. So that's to note. I would simply note or restate my own personal view that I think we underestimate the importance of local media and what we are losing, or what we may lose if, and that this is one small way in which recording, advertising jobs helped to sustain local media in a way that was appropriate and didn't jeopardise editorial independence. So I genuinely think it's a shame that this change has been made. These are relatively tiny amounts of money. Okay, 5.10 is a DALO readout response on the next hybrid working policy. That's at page 108 of the meeting pack. So the committee previously asked for information on how the hybrid working policy worked, on how it was monitored, and what evidence evidence or data had been collected and or would be collected in relation to hybrid working. The department indicates that the development of a new online system will enable management information to be provided on the operation of hybrid working across the Northern Ireland Civil Service. This will include the number of staff availing of a hybrid working arrangement by grade and department, number of in-office days, and location. Line managers will be responsible for ensuring staff adhere to the minimum workplace attendance requirement under the revised policy, taking account of individual circumstances, including any agreed alternate working patterns. I think the upshot of this is that there was no recording of, or there was very little recording of hybrid working. I think hybrid working offers huge benefits for people if properly implemented. It's just slightly odd that we haven't had, that it's only really happening now properly, or it only appears to be happening now, unless I have to, Clerk can correct me. Whenever we asked, we were told, we're going to start doing this. I think given some of the issues we've had around absenteeism, work and concerns around workplace morale and all of those things, I think it's slightly concerning that a lot of information is only starting to be collected now, and therefore the data will probably be, that will reduce the effectiveness of the data, because you won't have the time series will be shorter. You won't be able to compare to, for example, 21, 22, or even another recent years. And I think this is going to be really important information, something that we look at in detail as we begin our civil service reform work. Deputy Chair, Aidan McMahon.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So for 4 years they've been operating this and have no data on it, and they brought in a policy, and I'm just a wee bit disappointed with the response, because they've basically said that they're continuing to not really gather any data, because they've just sort of talked for a few paragraphs but said line managers are responsible for it, and they haven't really mentioned data again. So I think that it would be good if we could respond to say that we'll be picking this up in our inquiry into the people strategy, but how effective is any policy if you're not monitoring it? You haven't monitored it, as you say, you've got no comparators, but this shows as if there's no intention to record or monitor it anywhere. So how is anybody supposed to know what's happening where in any particular departments? And especially as we come to be looking at the civil service office estate, we need data here, and my reading of that is there's not really any intention to move in that direction. So I think that it would be good if we could highlight our concerns around that and say we'll be revisiting it in our inquiry.
I definitely agree with that. I also think, given the response says that when the hybrid working policy was implemented in June 22, it was agreed policy should be regularly reviewed to ensure it continued to meet the needs of the civil service and to consider any new and emerging aspects of hybrid working. It would be helpful to understand, one, was it regularly reviewed? And two, if they regularly reviewed it, how did they regularly review it? If they weren't gathering any management information or data on its operation, it just seems bizarre, to be honest, that this has been implemented without any kind of gathering of data. in a systematic way, it's pretty concerning. Steve Aiken, did you wish to come in?
No, Chair, it was about a previous item about the local newspapers. Sorry, I've just sent you a note to put into the record, please.
No problem. I don't know if anybody else wishes to come in on this. Banking.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't actually seen the revised policy. Just when it refers that line managers will be responsible for ensuring staff adhere to the minimum workplace attendance requirement. What is the minimum, and does it vary according to posts?
2 days a week.
2 days a week.
Is that across the board?
That will, again, depend on business need. So, for example, there will be a lot of jobs where attendance throughout the number of hours required a week will be necessary in a lot of the professional and technical grades. So I suppose a sweeping statement might be that administrative officials can avail of this, but not everybody can. It would be the same in most public sector workplaces. I suppose an example in the Assembly would be ushering staff need to be here to fulfil their role, whereas administrative staff can avail of our own similar policy where it's 40% of business need.
Seniors are expected to do more.
Yeah, and senior civil servants are expected to be in more, as is with the case in pretty much all. It's probably worth kind of giving a backdrop to the whole policy of business need. So this isn't right. You know, you need to be there 40%. It is based on business need. So if business need requires people to attend more often, then they will need to attend more often. And if there is a need for mandatory attendance, say some kind of mandatory training or whatever, that will also have to be factored in. The other issue, Chair, that has been brought up previously is whether there will be a desk for people to come to with the disposal of a significant amount of the civil service estate. We've had officials in the brief on that before, but it is something that may become more of an issue now that this policy has become official. In larger buildings, Chair, there's also a system for booking a desk to hot desk, which does provide a record, but that's not universal, which means they don't have perfect data. So where the policy kind of, and the response from the DOF takes us is it's for line managers to monitor, and we're not really given an insight into how that's monitored. So as the Deputy Chair had said, effectively there isn't a complete data set on this at all. And it is something that members have already said they want to pick up with the inquiry.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
It is something we are definitely going to pick up with the inquiry, but I think in the sort of we
have a number of issues to raise.
Couple of particular points we need to raise them and get them thinking about before that. Okay, members, content. We're going to go on to 510. We've done. Sorry, 510 we've done. 511 is about Casement Park funding. That's page 109 of the meeting pack. We had asked for an update on Minister's discussions with the Chancellor regarding Casement Park funding. The Department indicated that the 50 million FTC has been provided to the Executive over the period 26-27 to 29-30, subject to sufficient finance being raised elsewhere to deliver the project. The profile of funding is also to be agreed with the British Government, and that the additional 50 million FTC has been provided on, quote, a net basis, which means that it does not need to be repaid to the Treasury. It's not clear from the response that there have been any further discussions between the Minister and the Chancellor. I'd say, speaking personally myself, this is fairly concerned about the way this has kind of drifted into, we're now 3.5 months on from the spending review. We had an announcement that FTC had been allocated to Casement Park. We haven't had anything more at this point about how this, the project is going to be delivered from the Communities Minister, or I understand there was a conversation either this week or last week between the Communities Minister and Finance Minister, I think, but I'm not sure. There was also still a little bit of doubt. Steve Aiken was questioning the Finance Minister the other day about the status of that. It's not doubt, but it appears to be a conversation about whether this will involve an equity stake in a new stadium when one is finally built, whether it will be an equity stake for the UK government or the Executive. All of those things I think are, so basically I think it's quite important for us to get from the Department clarity on what is actually happening, what are the discussions. If there are live policy discussions, and I hope there are, that's fine, but I do think it's now quite urgent that we get clarity from the Department on where the situation is with the FTC. Do you want to change?
We're just discussing. I think we have a recollection that we did put a request in regarding whether or not this was an executive equity stake, and I can't recall whether we got a response. Okay. We're just seeing if we can put it up quickly.
Well, we can.
But if not, we'll check and see, and we bring that back next week if we already have it. If we can't put our hands on it, we'll put it through the Dallow readout as well. Deputy Chair.
As of now, my understanding, this is not. This 50 million exists as a hypothetical amount of money which can be drawn down. I'm not sure this is budgeted for in the executive 25-26 budget as yet, because there's no, from what I can understand, policy agreement to proceed or secure. No, the project obviously is still live, but I basically want to know where we go from here, and I think the Finance Department can give us a little bit more on where they see it and their conversations, both with communities and with the Treasury. Deputy Chair.
Thank you, Chair. On the response in the third bullet point, I don't understand the language that's used, and I don't know if this terminology I'm just not familiar with, but to say the additional £50 million FTC has been provided on a net basis, I don't understand what that means at all. And they're saying it means it doesn't need to be repaid to Treasury, so I would like to understand what is meant by that. Because it's not a term, it's not a type of investment, it's not something to manage in public money. So yeah, I just don't understand what that means. I would like some clarity.
It would be potentially. It may be that Fisher's good day answer. It may be that it is consistent with taking an equity stake. Take an equity stake is in lieu of a repayment. Effectively, you hold the balance sheet contains an asset or part of an asset. So therefore, that may be part of that explanation, but I don't know. But I do think we need clarity, because this update does not give us clarity, and we're now 3.5 months on from the spending round. And to reiterate an obvious point, people have been waiting for the stadium for more than a decade. Steve Aiken.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And I'll just follow up from the Vice Chair or the Deputy Chair said. It's the managing public money, because everywhere I've looked, I haven't seen any use of this language on the use of FTC anywhere apart from what the Finance Minister said on the floor of the Assembly. And my concern is that he might think he's going to be able to use it for that way, but I don't think that's within the Treasury rules. And I would really like clarity on how something that, generally speaking, has to be paid back isn't going to be paid back, and where the authority that lies. And again, as you said yourself, Chair, how's it going to be accounted for? I'm not against the 50 million going to Casement Park. Absolutely not against it at all. I just don't understand how this FTC rule doesn't follow the normal procedures, and I would really like to have some clarity on it.
Happy that we asked those questions. It is to be absolutely clear. The UK government, the Treasury, have said that this is going to build Casement Park, so I don't think there's any doubt that this money has been made available. The question of how it is accounted for is an interesting one, and we can get to the bottom of that. The question that lots of people watching this will want to know is, when is the stadium going to be built? So while we're in the Finance Committee talking about the theoreticals, I want to understand, when is this money going to be dispersed, not just how is it going to be accounted for, but those are questions to ask too. I know, for example, the Communities Minister is talking about potentially drawing or applying for, trying to access FTC for other stadia. If that is his plan, I would like to hear it and like to get clarity. Okay, we're going to Chair,
just one comment, sorry again. Yesterday when we were having a debate about Tribeca, the Communities Minister talked again about use of FTC. If we can use FTC in this novel way for Casement, I think we should be looking at using FTC in more novel ways, particularly things like sort of major investment projects that are also to the benefit of the people of Belfast.
Okay, well, I think you're now quoting something I was trying to call for. Not that I'm trying to call myself, trying to self-praise is no praise at all, but that was a policy that I was pushing forward in the Assembly a year ago. But in any case, I don't disagree with that. But I'm going to bring on others. Gemma Dolan.
Yeah, no, it's just a brief point that on a question time yesterday, the Finance Minister said that he had met with the Communities Minister, I think it was this week.
Yes, that's what I understand.
Monday, yeah, and he has committed that, he is committed to getting Casement built. So we just need to, if you want to get the clarity on this, but obviously the Finance Minister has.
Yeah.
So
he certainly wants to, and I think that's what we need to get from the Finance Department is their view on how and when they see this money being dispersed. They accessed, they have played this role in terms of thankfully getting this additional spending power from London. Clearly there's going to have to be a conversation now about delivering it, so I want to hear from that, and I think we should be copying our responses to the Communities Committee too. Deirdre?
On Steve's point around FTC, I mean, FTC can be used, and actually communities
It's been used for community departments, been used for
are
equity
one
before,
that
yes.
does maximise their
Yeah.
usage of it and always has done. So, like, there's been schemes in East Belfast, some charities
Yeah.
that have drew down FTC to do supported housing where they're purchasing new homes. So there are ways to do it, and I'm now glad that the Communities Minister's moving, and it's going to be a ministerial-led thing around Tribeca, but FTC can be used for those kind of wider social and,
Yeah.
and regeneration projects.
I just think we just need to get clarity on what's next on this project, because this announcement was made in June and we're now in September, we're now in October, but we may get some of that later on today. Okay, Brian Kingston.
Chair, the question is, I mean, in other cases, FTC is a loan. If you
It doesn't have to be,
repay-
it doesn't, but it can be a loan or equity. It can be loan or equity.
I want it to be.
Right. Just, I wonder, will that become the normal model then? More often becomes equity. Okay. But that has been the case elsewhere then.
So my understanding, that it's a financial transaction, meaning it can't be a straightforward, disbursement of public money in grant form to build something as capital spend. It has to be a financial transaction, meaning it's either paid back or there's an equity stake. That's a very rough way of explaining it.
Chair, we have probably the relevant officials later on. It might just be worth, as a
Members want to understand,
clarification
to
on
clarify
record,
that.
just to get that on record about FTC, exactly how that will work.
But just as chair, all those points are interesting ones. I don't want us to disappear into the kind of technicalities of FTC, which is important and interesting. But I think more important is understanding where the Casement Park project is, and if it's being delivered. Okay, right. Next up is 5.12, which is the AERC, the Assembly and Executive Review Committee. I will go back to that in one moment. Yes.
Just a question from Lauren here
Okay.
about the 50
Yeah,
minutes.
okay.
And
I'll
then the response there is,
Yeah.
provided on a net basis, it does not need to be repaid, and the executive can recycle any payments indefinitely.
Fine. Well, there is an answer there, just to go back to our previous item, which is an answer to a Lord's question from Lord Livermore, who is, I don't know if he still is, was a Treasury Minister, in answer to Lord Weir. So we can circulate that with members, and we'll include it in next week's pack so that people have it for information, just explaining what the phrase net basis means, and a little bit more detail of the terms of the UK government's offering this FTC funding for casement. But as I say, we still need more clarity on where the project is and what the department's views of that. Okay, so 5.12 is Assembly and Executive Review Committee. The review of Assembly Committee engagement on cross-cutting executive strategies, as at page 110 of the meeting pack. Further to previous correspondence regarding its review on cross-cutting executive strategies, the AERC has provided a list of cross-cutting strategies compiled by the Executive Office. This committee previously agreed to prepare a response to the AERC review. Now we have a draft response, which is at page 3 of the tabled pack. So if members want to go to page 3 of the table of your tabled pack, if you and give us your views on that, or if there are any amendments to that, let us know. I am content that this go in the name of our committee. Are there any additions or concerns people have? Nope. Okay, we're happy enough. Thank you. Now, we're going to do the next couple of items together because they relate to the Fiscal Council Bill. 5.13 is Managing Public Money in Northern Ireland. 5.14 is the OECD Principles for Independent Fiscal Institutions. And item 5.16 is the OECD submission to the NI Fiscal Council Bill. Now, it's important to say we will have the opportunity to debate and question the points raised in these. We don't have to exhaustively discuss absolutely everything in these responses right now, but it's useful for people to consider them. At page 15, this is at page 151 of the meeting pack, and separately at page 11 of the tabled pack. If members are agreed, we're going to add. At last week's meeting, I've skipped a paragraph. At last week's meeting, members referenced 2 documents in relation to discussions on the NI Fiscal Council Bill, and we agreed to give both further consideration. Those were Managing Public Money NI and the OECD Principles for Independent Fiscal Institutions. We will add both of those to the evidence base for the committee stage of the bill, if members are content, to the electronic bill folder and the committee report. The OECD has also, in addition to that, provided a response, we thank them for that, to this committee's call for evidence on the NI Fiscal Council Bill, highlighting highlighting its view and the strengths of the bill, as well as potential improvements to the bill. It talks about potential improvement in areas of independence and non-partisanship, operational autonomy, and stakeholder engagement, areas in which the bill could be more closely aligned to other independent fiscal institutions. Now, one point I would simply draw out is the specific point that was raised, and we discussed it, which is around effectively the autonomy of the Fiscal Council as per this bill, in terms of its autonomy from the Department of Finance. One of the questions we asked is, why not have it be report to the Assembly? Now, notwithstanding the fact that in our other bill there's a concern about a similar structure, but there is a question about whether we in this bill create some other structure to effectively procure the services, to employ the Fiscal Council to be the kind of reporting mechanism for the responsible body, I suppose, the SRO for the Fiscal Council rather than the Department of Finance. And that now the OECD don't come out right out in their thing and say it cannot be the way it is in the bill. I think it's fair to say, but they do raise some points and I suppose concerns, you might call them, or maybe concerns is putting it too strongly, but it is true to say that in their principles for independent fiscal institutions, they do say that these bodies should be wholly independent of central government, in this case devolved government. The Fiscal Council bill does not make them wholly independent. It's not the creature of the Department of Finance, but it is recruited by the Department of Finance. Now that's consistent with what happens, for example, with the OBR, but it's not quite the same. I'm not sure what the position is in Dublin, but it's not quite the same as just, for example, the Congressional Budget Office.
Just worth highlighting, we are going to discuss this in closed session next week to allow members to go through clause by clause.
Yeah.
But
So anyway,
it's a fairly exceptional response. It is a thing of beauty, I have to say, Chair, with the traffic light system. I've never had anything like that before.
Yeah, this is good. This makes it easier. So if you're on the table pack and you scroll down to the OECD document, table 1 basically goes through and has traffic lights for us. So anyone who's looking for an extremely reputable, well-resourced international organisation to do your work for you, on this one occasion you have one. But in any case, right, we will discuss this next week.
That, Chair?
It's a table pack. It's the OECD response to our report, and it's at page...
Starts at page 11.
11 of the table pack.
And then the beautiful chart starts at the bottom of page 12.
Chart starts at page, and it goes through... They go through each one of their principles of independent fiscal institution, and they say where the bill... and in most occasions, it's either green or mostly green. A couple of them are amber. A couple of them are mildly red. One of which, in addition to what I talked about around independence, is the fact that there is no formal provision for Assembly committees or members, even though they articulate that we, as the Finance Committee, are one of their absolute fundamental stakeholders, and there isn't it doesn't actually explicitly say that in the bill, that we, or the Assembly specifically. Anyway, people can peruse that and we'll be discussing it in more detail, but it's a really useful bit of evidence we have back from the OECD there. Okay, members are content that we add all of that we've discussed to the evidence base for the committee stage of the bill and to the electronic bill folder and the committee report. If members are agreed, we will forward the assessment to the department for a response, so they will have the opportunity to respond to the issues that the OECD raise, and also seek members' agreement to schedule a closed session at next week's meeting.
Chair, just on top of that, can I seek members' agreement to forward the second audit committee response to the department as well around the administrative and financial provisions bill?
Yes. Right.
Thank you.
Okay, now we have already done item 6, so I think we're going on now to our other briefing session. 9, are we going to 9? 7. Okay, members, are going to go to agenda item 7, which is a piece of secondary legislation, and this won't be quite the same without Paul Frew in the committee, I have to say. Agenda item 7 is SR 2025-150, the Coronavirus Act 2020, registration of deaths and stillbirths, extension number 2, Northern Ireland Order. At page 210 of the meeting pack, there's a Clerk's memo and supporting departmental response relating to a statutory rule, which is subject to a confirmatory resolution procedure, and it will cease to take effect after 40 days unless approved by the Assembly. So members, at the start of the meeting, the 10th of September, the committee agreed that we were content in principle with a proposed statutory rule to extend the expiry date of the temporary provisions of the Coronavirus Act 2020 in relation to death and stillbirth registration. That rule has now been formally laid before the Assembly. The provisions will be extended until the 24th of March 26, at which point it is anticipated that primary legislation to make these provisions permanent will be which will have completed its parliamentary passage, which is something that we have obviously been working on, and we would assume and hope, having completed our work on that bill, that it will now proceed very speedily back to the Assembly floor for consideration stage and then final stage. The committee agreed it was content with the proposed rule at our meeting on the 10th of September, and the Department has stated there have been no changes to policy content since the SL1 was submitted to the committee. Full details of the background to the rule can be found in correspondence from the Department at pages 212 and 217 of the meeting pack. The Assembly debate on the SR is scheduled for the 7th of October, therefore the committee is being asked to reach a decision at today's meeting. ESR has not formally reported on the rule, however has provided an informal view, which is at page 32. Obviously the examiner has reported on this rule many times now because we've extended it many times. So members, I assume, but we will have members have the opportunity to say otherwise, that members are content with the statutory rule. If so, I'm going to put the question: the Committee for Finance has considered SR 150/2025, the Coronavirus Act 2020, Registration of Death and Stillbirth Order in Northern Ireland 2025, and recommends that it be approved by the Assembly. Agreed?
Agreed.
Okay, now on to agenda item 8, which is the budget 26 to 29/30, which is resource 26/27 to 28/29, and 26/27 to 29/30, i.e. what we hope will be a multi-year budget. Nice to say that out loud and slowly, because we haven't had one in a very long time. So members, so first of all, I presume everyone's content that Hansard report this session. Members, there's a briefing paper provided by the department, which was considered at last week's meeting, on the budget 26 to 30 information gathering exercise at page 224 of the meeting pack. During last week's meeting, members had a number of queries from this paper, and officials were asked to provide further briefing at today's meeting. At page 241 of the meeting pack is correspondence from the Assembly Audit Committee and the Finance Minister, which outlines budget figures for the NIAO, NIPSO and NIAC that the committee has asked the Department of Finance to reflect in its budget consultation document. So members, that's to note, unless anybody specifically wishes to comment on that aspect. So we've got a number of other background papers: 5-year departmental plans guidance at page 244 of the meeting pack, an infographic on departmental 5-year plan roadmaps. If you are into infographics, that's at page 284. An infographic on the budget improvement plan roadmap, which is at page 285. And we welcome to talk us through where all this is Gavin Patrick, who's Director of Finance at the Department of Finance; Seanin Ferguson, who's from Financial Management Branch at the Department; Jeff McGuinness, who's Head of Budget Sustainability at DOF; and Aidan McMahon, who is Director of Fiscal Policy Division. You are all very welcome. Gavin, would you give us an opening statement, and then members indicate if you wish to ask questions.
Indeed. Afternoon, Chair and members. Thank you for the opportunity to provide clarification you may need on the initial departmental return for the future year budget exercise. Just before I start, I'd just like to introduce my colleague Seanin, who leads our central budgeting team, and Seanin will be able to provide some of the details we go through the session. Also, Chair, as you've mentioned, joining us are Jeff McGuinness, Director of Budget Sustainability Team, who can provide details on the 5-year departmental fiscal plans and revenue raising, and Aidan McMahon, who's the Director of Fiscal Policy Division, who can provide more detail on the fiscal framework and fiscal devolution. Chair, as you've mentioned, the committee, I understand the committee is interested in the linkage between all of these areas, and I understand there's some queries raised on our return from last week. So I'll now provide a high-level summary of the position and clarify some of those points that were raised, after which we're happy to take any further questions. A budget 2026-30 information gathering exercise was commissioned by PSG colleagues on the 30th of June, and returns were due on the 4th of September.
They all came back in time?
So I only deal with the DOF.
You only the DOF. That's very good. Yeah, that's good. That's good. But presumably yours was on time then?
It was back with the supply team on time. May have been the formal return was maybe a day late, but it was within the time
we
frame.
won't quibble about that.
We'd been engaging with the team, so they knew what it was shaping up like. So this exercise is designed as a first step to help inform the executive decisions for a multi-year budget reflecting the period covered by the spending review, and this will be the first multi-year budget since 2011. The Minister intends to develop a multi-year draft budget and bring this to the executive in time to allow for a 12-week consultation and a final budget to be delivered in advance of the new financial year. Those executive decisions on the draft budget are likely to be made after the Chancellor's budget statement on the 26th of November. In terms of fiscal framework, the committee will be aware that agreement was reached on an interim fiscal framework in May last year. This resulted in a needs-based factor being included within our funding arrangements for the first time. And the 5-year departmental budget plans form part of the overarching framework in developing the forecast requirements, and our department's plan is currently being worked on. Focusing now on the information gathering exercise, this exercise sought information on inescapable resource bids over the years 26 to 29, forecasts for years 26 to 29 for executive earmarked funds, and details of capital DEL requirements for 4 years 2026 to 2030. Work was taken forward throughout the summer across all business areas to determine the forecasted spend position both in resource and capital over those years. Within our department, business areas were asked to live within a flat budget as far as possible, which means the ability to spend to the same level of costs and therefore no inherent real-term increase, for example, for inflation. Therefore, only bids for inescapable pressures were to be submitted. The paper provided to the committee sets out those initial forecast requirements alongside the assumptions made across the department, including a pay assumption of progression and 3% overall revalorisation and a general 3% inflation increase. This provides an as-is position if no action is taken to change our approach around costs. This clearly isn't a realistic position, and therefore initial savings of 82.1 million were identified over the 3 years. Again, these are set out in the paper and include increased income, rationalisation of the office estate, efficiencies and transformation savings.
Just to be clear, that's the department is positing 81 million of savings over the 5-year period?
For the 3-year period.
3-year period, okay.
Yeah.
And that's a mix of office disposals and income?
So it's a mixture of the rationalisation of the office estate, so that will be in relation to resource costs in relation to that rationalisation, so like some maintenance and so on will be required.
Half wages?
There may be some in there in relation specifically to buildings as well, and then efficiencies and transformation savings as well, and income generation. And these are real reductions in requirements made from active decisions rather than either in terms of efficiency or transformation.
You say they're real decisions. Does that mean they're decisions you are making now, the things that will happen or things that might happen should the executive agree to this?
Those are things that the department has already made to look, assuming then that the likes of office rationalisation takes place as planned. So it's obviously forecasted savings still, but that's a plan to be taken forward.
These are plans. This is what, for example, the department, before we move on to the broader picture with other departments. Currently, the Department of Finance is penning in 81 million pounds of savings as a mix of office rationalisation, income generation. You might say a bit more of that. That means what, fees in some areas?
Yeah, I was going to come to that share as well. Yeah. So yeah, because I know it's one of the queries that got raised last week. So yes, so that's our plan at the moment. We've taken those into account before we went then brought forward the bids. So our bids are based on those savings being implemented.
Okay.
So I was about to say that too. So the resultant pressure after those savings then is just short of 90 million in the first year, 34 in second year, and 34 million as well in the third year. And the bids aligned to these pressures were submitted as part of this exercise and are set out within the paper in 3 thematic groups: transformation projects, digital modernisation, new services, shared services and pay. In terms of the cost of vacancies included in the forecast, I'm aware there were some queries on this in your discussion last week. These existing vacancies are estimated at circa 16 million, 8 million of which were described as income generating. Income generating means the posts being filled have a clear correlation to income being received in that business area. So this includes areas such as DSO, CPD, IT Assist and Internal Audit, who fully recover their cost for services from other departments. NISRA, where staff are outposted to departments. And LPS in areas where the work is funded by fees such as land registration and valuation services.
Largely the additional income is from other parts of the civil service, but not actually, but the other bits are, did you say LPS there?
LPS
But that's
would be the outward facing element of that,
Yeah,
but the
that's
rest would be
basically
services provided mostly within the
dancing
civil service.
solicitors or estate agents or whoever type thing. Okay. And and the number on, is there a specific number on income generation then over the next 5 years? On the charges you've talked about, whether internal or external, which would be part of the 81 million.
It would be part of the 81 million.
It's okay, we don't have to keep going, yes.
Okay. In relation to the pay bid itself, that includes pay increases for the existing staff. Staff costs on new services such as census are included within the specific bids for those new services. We're continuing to work on our charging model, and that's in relation to the income, to ensure there's a robust and consistent, transparent approach that provides a fair, full cost recovery approach to all departments, so that each are paying the appropriate amount for services they receive, and that approach is fully in line with managing public money and Audit Office guidance. In terms of capital, the department's requirements have increased significantly for the 4 years, details of which are set out in the paper. The main increases are in relation to the LPS transformation programme and the Office estate consolidation. I hope that provides some clarity around the queries that were raised last week, and we're happy to take any questions.
Okay. And I think it would be, that's extremely helpful, Gavin, thank you. And I think a fair chunk of the questions will be beyond the department, I think it's fair to say, probably, and will be on the broader 5-year piece. So I don't know if it's okay for me to start with, I presume that's largely your word, Jeff, in terms of the broader 5-year plans, and then obviously as part of that, Aidan, you will be leading on how that 5-year plans are going to incorporate other budget sustainability or fiscal framework work. So I might just take it in turn, if that's okay, Jeff. First of all, the department's current plan is that there is a 5-year budget for the executive. When? By the end of this year, or?
It's not quite that way. Obviously, we only have a 3-year envelope given by
resource.
Treasury. Yeah, and 4 years for capital. Departments will be putting their 5-year.
5 years. I should have said multi-year. My apologies. That's my bad. A multi-year budget by the end of this year.
Yes, that's still currently the plan. And then obviously departments will be putting their 5-year plans alongside those.
There will be the plan is that there will be multi-year budgets, which are allocations that are reflective of both the spending round that came, spending review that came in June, and any updates to that from the UK government in November time, end of November.
November, yes.
And in addition to that, on top of that, there will be 5-year departmental plans, which will give effectively an indicative sense of things for 2 years after in the case of resource and 1 year after in the case of capital.
Yes, so it will give department. You will have in those 5-year plans the projections of what departments think that they will spend or what their budget will look like over the 5 years, and that will be in the plans themselves. Will be compared to the sort of average increase of the Northern Ireland block over that period as well. So you'll effectively get a gap analysis at the end of that to say departments' plans are increasing by X, the overall Northern Ireland block will only increase by Y, and there's a space between those two. Yeah.
On capital first, there are a number of areas where there's huge uncertainty around specific capital projects. The A5 being probably the most obvious one, Casement Park being another. How, and then add to that other things which are in the ether but not agreed. They're agreed to one extent or another. One could be York Street interchange. The other could be the All-Ireland Strategic Rail Review. We also don't have the investment strategy. Are these things going to be specifically dealt with in the multi-year budget? Are people going to be able to read the multi-year budget and see, right, that is how the A5, notwithstanding, assuming the legalities are dealt with, that's how the A5 is going to be budgeted for in the coming years?
Yeah, so making a distinction again between the multi-year budget and the 5-year plans, the multi-year budget will be allocations to departments, specific capital allocations to departments, and whenever ministers make decisions on those, then they will be those firm allocations for each individual department, and you should be able to see that granularity of detail.
People, when they look at the multi-year budget, they will be able to open up the page relating to the Department of Infrastructure, and yes, understand the distinction between 5-year plans and the 3/4 year multi-year budgets. Will be 4 year in relation to capital. They will be able to say, right, the department is budgeting X for the A5 over this forecast period.
So it will depend on the level of what departments are putting into the budget document itself, because at that stage we produce the budget document fairly soon after the executive has decided on a multi-year budget, and therefore ministers need time to understand their allocations and what they will kind of prioritise within their departments. So it might be that the budget document itself talks about the ambition of the department, but it might not be specific on X for this project. That might come slightly afterwards as ministers make decisions with that information.
Okay. So it might not say there will be this amount of money for the A5 or Casement Park or extending the rail line to Armagh. That would probably be quite a short. I'm sure Owen would like to see that, but it'll probably take a while to deliver beyond this horizon. But the point, I suppose, my question is, like, when we see this document, is it? I mean, are people are going to be able to see the specific updated timelines for when a department expects to see these major capital projects crystallise? No. Yes.
Not specifically in the budget itself, but fairly shortly after the budget, we would expect ministers to have made decisions on that and then give certainty, because obviously capital is really important to have that certainty going forward and planning. So we would expect ministers to make decisions really quite rapidly after having their budget envelope set, and then they'll be able to say it's going to be project X, Y, and Z.
Okay. Inflation is now still running above target. It's running, I've checked the most recent, certainly above 4%, the most recent ONS data. Presumably that is adding a very specific pressure to planning for pay in the civil service.
Yes, inflation will add very specific pressures right across the system. As inflation changes, we don't get an additional amount, over and above our spending review envelope. So we still have those parameters to work within. So anything that inflation eats into effectively reduces the ability for us to do different things or more of the same.
Okay. Just do your word, Aidan, on the fiscal framework and revenue raising piece. Is there going to be any revenue raising in this document?
In terms of in the full fiscal framework?
Well, is there going to be an updated fiscal framework, first of all, in the multi-year budget?
Well, there's no fixed timeline for a full fiscal framework at this point. There's a number of factors obviously have to be taken forward. So we need to do technical work in the background in terms of the scope and what exactly we want in that and what the ask and what the minister wants to push for. And obviously then there needs to be engagement with the UK government on those issues, Treasury in particular. And given it'll be a cross-cutting issue, there will have to be engagement with the executive. So we are post the spending review, and obviously there were some commitments, if you like, made at the spending review in terms of the full fiscal framework and some of the things that it will look at. So, for example, Professor Holtham's work in more detail, and thinking about fiscal devolution as well. So we need to progress those issues, both internally within the department. That's something we're actively doing with the Minister at this point in time.
If you're only progressing things like where we go next with Holtham or fiscal devolution internally in the department now with the Minister, they're probably not going to be in the multi-year budget in 2 months' time?
Well, the fiscal framework is something that will be done in parallel with multi-year budgeting, and then if there's any implication or depending on milestones reached or conclusions reached, then it will consider in relation to the multi-year budget at that point in time. But it will depend where we get to and by when.
But what you're saying to me sounds like there's not going to be, we shouldn't expect a clear updated statement on the fiscal framework, whether that could include Wholesome and Need. Because if the Treasury was going to agree, so the position post the spending review was, we don't agree, we've made progress, but we're kind of still agreeing to disagree. We want more of a conversation. We want you to agree to, to engage with us, for example, on the agriculture piece. They haven't agreed that they're going to deal with that by November, and it's now 6 weeks. So I would say it's unlikely that that's going to be dealt with.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair assessment.
Yeah.
And as we're dealing with Treasury, there's obviously lots of detail within a full fiscal framework. So yes, there's some issues that were, if you like, resolved at spending review, and some issues that we think need further analysis, investigation and discussion with Treasury. And we've secured that commitment to do that as we go forward. So they are things that will take time to do. I think that's fair to say.
All the final ones for everybody in college, but just to be absolutely clear, this is will be probably the most important fiscal document or budgetary document that an executive has produced since more than a decade and a half, basically. Two things: one, is there going to be any revenue raising in it or proposals for new fiscal devolution?
Revenue raising might be more in
Can I just jump in there? Obviously, we are looking at strategic income review as part of the budget process, where my team is currently working on that, and that will look at existing income that departments have at the moment. It'll be looking at kind of planned changes coming up, and it'll be looking at that kind of potential income that could be there in the future, within kind of the executive's remit. So some of that information, we're hoping we will have that ready for the executive to consider alongside planning for its multi-year budget. So it might not, it'll be a factor in how the executive plan their multi-year budget.
And it kind of condensed that, though. Thank you for that very carefully phrased. Does that mean that the executive will have some kind of paper to consider on revenue raising, but there's no commitment that there will actually be revenue raising or commitments to specific revenue raising in the multi-year budget?
So obviously, we will produce the paper. That paper will set out what the possible options might be for executive ministers, but it will be for individual executive ministers to make those specific decisions. It's not for us to kind of impose anything on executive ministers. So we will set out the range of options right across the system, and then as a minister understands their budget and what that looks like going forward in the multi-year space, they will be able to then make decisions on individual revenue raising.
That sounds like it's not going to be. From that, and I'm inferring from that there's not going to be significant revenue raising, because if you're going to do significant revenue raising, you want to be doing it. That has to be part of your multi-year budget. I.e., we're going to broaden the tax base by raising this particular bit of revenue, or we're even going to, by the way, be more expansive on fiscal devolution. But it sounds like we're not going to go there either. But correct me if that's wrong. But what I mean is, if it was going to be significant, then you would want to be building it into the headroom in the multi-year budget. But it's not. It's something that might happen afterwards, that ex-minister might say, we'll charge a few bob for that and we'll have a bit extra. I think that's correct?
So if you're thinking about those kind of wider fiscal revenue generation measures, that's part of the fiscal framework. That's not going to be resolved in time for the
that's helpful to know. I think it's good to clarify that. So we will not expect significant. I think we're not going to expect either significant fiscal devolution or revenue raising in the multi-year budget. That's fair enough. But understanding that there are still processes going on and discussions in the background and the various reviews. One final point for me before bringing others. There's been some discussion in this committee and elsewhere about where we are with Casement Park and the 50 million. Are one of you able to give us an update as to the status of that £50 million of FTC and where the discussions are, and specifically if it or indeed more money is going to be budgeted in the multi-year budget for the delivery of Casement Park?
No, I'm not. It's not my area of expertise. I can. We were listening in earlier. I can speak to the repayment to Treasury, that net and gross basis, if that would be helpful for you.
It would be helpful, I think, for clarify for the record. Yeah.
Yes. So way back at the start, whenever financial transactions were introduced, Treasury put it on a gross basis. So effectively, you got an allocation, but then you had to repay that allocation to Treasury over a number of years. More recently now, they have decided to basically factor in those repayments into anything that they would do, any allocations that they would make going forward. So we're now receiving that net. Financial transaction capital still has to be a loan to or equity investment in the private sector here, but whenever we get that money back from those loans or that equity investment, we are free then to recycle that within the executive, and we don't have to repay that bit to Treasury, but we can recycle it into further loans and further equity investment to the private sector going forward. So it effectively self-perpetuates.
Okay, that's perfect. So I think it's fair to say we aren't any the wiser today about where the 50 million FTC that has been promised but not crystallised and not agreed yet exists. I think this. So just on the 50 million, the Treasury confirmed that this will come subject to it being agreed by the executive with other funding and an agreed design for this, or agreed further procurement stages.
Yeah, that's my understanding, is that it will be allocated on the basis that the funding for the Casement Park as a whole is understood at that point, but it can be agreed. It can be allocated to us at any stage from next year onwards, I think.
Okay, I'm sure the bill of it will occur to me, but I'm going to bring the Deputy Chair now. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thanks all for coming to brief us on this today. Just a few things. On the initial forecast requirements, where you've built in the 5% annual increase in office states rates, does that mean that we should expect to be seeing 5% increase in rates for each of the next 3 years? Is that what you're saying here? Is that what the expected position is going to be?
No, well, I don't think you can totally correlate that to the rates levels. That's just an estimate that has been used as part of our forecasting assumptions that we've used.
Okay. You just had the decision been made, and I'd missed that one there. In terms of the increased income charging, so 12.7 million, and you're saying that it's reflecting charges within other departments. It's not like external revenue raising. Do you check anywhere, or does that happen centrally within Department of Finance, where you're showing that that's increasing, that other departments are actually showing that as an increased cost to them, that you're not just reflecting increased income and it's moving around within the system? I'm just thinking of the bigger pot where we can look at that easily and say, yeah, that's increased income of £12.7 million, but actually to the block it's just moving around.
To the block, it's not an increase to the block, but it's sharing those costs and making the cost score in the right department as appropriate. And like I say, that's in line with the managing public money guidance and office as well.
And then the office estate rationalisation, so over a series of briefings, it's my understanding that whenever the occupancy rate was assessed, it was pre-COVID, and it was something like 40% was floating around at that time, and that was on the basis on which the estate was deemed how much needed to be sold off. And given that we're kind of running hand in hand with the hybrid working and getting people back into the office, I think that there's been a bit of a misconception that this is being sold off and there's going to be nowhere for anybody to come back to. So I just wanted to confirm, whenever you've got this in terms of the savings and that going forward, that the assessment of the office estate was pre-COVID at full operational rates before people had moved to the hybrid working.
So it would have been colleagues in Properties Division that provided through the figures, who are obviously managing the estate review and the estate consolidation policy, so they would have taken all those forecasts into account.
Yeah, they had been up before and that was my understanding of it, but it seems to have went into a different conversation space now, and I just wanted to confirm that. But maybe go back to Properties Division in terms of that one. On the cost of the vacancies, thanks for clarifying in terms of the income generating, because it had been raised last week. Just in terms of the amount there, so it was £15 million included in the forecast, and we discussed a little bit last time about, you know, at what point are these vacancies reviewed? Are they reviewed every year? Are they reviewing every couple of years as to how much are actual real vacancies? Because a lot's been said here about the move to digitisation of services, which you would expect would reduce the need for certain roles as the services have changed, and if the vacancies are sitting for a very long period of time, have, you know, working patterns adjusted, have roles evolved over time, or is this just like a sitting carried figure? I just want to know what the process is to look at that.
So certainly as we've gone through this process, my team have challenged the business areas in relation to the vacancies, and that would happen at every one. And I think there'll obviously be some vacancies which will have been filled and new vacancies will have come on. There may be some that have been there for a long period of time. I noted in the paper that we're going to continue to challenge that because it is a significant figure, especially in the financial position that we may be in, depending on where the budget lands. So it's certainly something that I'm focusing on to ensure that if we are saying there are vacancies, that they are there and we're planning to fill them, or can we, and just to make sure that is as real a figure as it can be. But it will depend on the business area, and we really need to have good engagement, and we continue to have good engagement with them to be sure in those figures, as you say.
No, that's good to know that you're doing that exercise. And just a final one from me, where you're noting efficiencies from you know, moving to digitisation of services. I would have some concerns right across the civil service, but obviously this is just limited to the Department of Finance piece, as to whenever things are moved electronically. Are you taking an assessment of accessibility and quality of the service that's actually being received by members of the public? Because where you can quantify these centralised savings, I'm just really concerned, because whenever a lot of things are digitised, I would see that correlating with increased queries and complaints and people coming to my office, and you know, me and my staff ending up, you know, sitting doing a lot of services with people and helping them access the online. So whereas we're quantifying it as as a saving there, is there any, you know, capture of that quality of service?
Yeah, so I picked up the query from last week, so I checked with my colleagues in LPS, who would be our main customer facing team. So they were clear that when transforming the services to digital, understanding how customers are impacted is a key priority. They've ensured that there's appropriate mechanisms to support those less digitally enabled, and it's embedded end to end and throughout the service design, rollout and support. So it is something that is absolutely on their radar.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant, because like I know, you know, we like to capture the numbers and say about the savings and the efficiencies, but you know, it's always important that we just stop and remember what the actual frontline services are and the quality of service that the public are getting.
And I should also add, you know, obviously that's the customer facing. A number of the efficiencies are internal, so which is a different aspect to it as well, but that would be the customer facing.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Brian.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you for your paper and your attendance. I want to ask more about that, the paragraph 3 at the bottom of page 5 of your report. About the cost of vacancies, including the forecast, 15.5 million. So what does that wording mean? The cost of vacancies is 15.5 million. So does that mean vacancies are being carried at a cost of 15?
Well, it's just within our forecast. So there's an assumption within our forecast that those vacancies will be filled at some point. So, but I suppose maybe as we've been discussing, we need to determine will they be filled as planned and has been forecast. So I'd be expecting business areas to assume if they know there's a new piece of work coming on board, say halfway through next year, then only the cost of 6 months should be included. So it's about forecasting the cost of those vacancies being filled.
Right. Okay. Well, that's good. So it's forecasting, as you say, that the vacancies will be filled, and 7.6 million of those will be are income generating. So it's expected that, well, it's forecasted that income will come in. I'm just going to ask about income which is being lost because vacancies are not filled.
So you've got a number of those within the department that we're charging other departments, so the likes of internal audit, DSO, CPD. So in some of those areas, the work can only be taken forward if the staff come in. So if staff don't come in, there's no cost, and equally there'll be no income then to come against it. It will mean then the service being able to be provided will have to be varied to match that.
And what is the reason that those vacancies exist? Is it primarily lack of budget? Is it lack of available suitable people? Is it lack of recruitment exercises?
I would say it will depend on the post. I can speak probably as we did when we were here a few weeks ago in the accountancy profession. And it's about trying to get the people to join us and the recruitment. Within the accountancy profession, we've run competitions, but there'd still be vacancies there as well. But it would be a mixture. There wouldn't be one specific reason across all areas.
Yeah. Is the insufficient pace of recruitment exercises, is that one of the part of the problem, or is it just getting the right people with the right skills? Is the availability of suitable people?
I would say it'd be a mixture of reasons. I wouldn't say it's down to the pace of recruitment equally alone. Obviously, if all departments could recruit at the same time, we wouldn't be able to do that. So our colleagues in HR obviously have to pace out those recruitment competitions, but that alone wouldn't be the reason. It's various reasons such as competition with private sector for specific skills and so on, and within the public sector, across not just civil service but across public sector as well.
Yeah, well, we know there will always be churn and people leaving for other posts or retiring or whatever. But it's just, we were told that the pace of recruitment slowed dramatically during COVID, and it's just to know, has it picked up since to a sufficient level?
Well, I suppose my colleagues in HR would be better placed to speak on that, but I can say within the accountancy profession we've run competitions on all accountancy grades in the past, in this current calendar year, so we certainly have been able to move forward in those.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Okay, happy to. And just on a couple of other additional points, no further members have indicated, but obviously I would encourage members, please do ask a question if you wish. In terms of longer term planning, obviously we've made this point repeatedly in this committee about the limitations of budget making in the absence of a programme for government. There is now a programme for government. It's almost like given our views on how clear and impactful that programme for government is, but nevertheless it exists. Something that doesn't exist, which is possibly even more important in terms of a budget making, a long-term budget making process, because it has to be specific and it has to isolate priorities, is an investment strategy. Are you asking for to see an investment strategy in order to help you deliver the multi-year budget?
Yeah, we are in constant, I'm not quite sure it's constant, but regular engagement certainly with colleagues in SIB, trying to understand where that is. Obviously the ruling in the A5 has maybe changed a little bit around what that ISNI might look like, so there's a little bit of discussion around that. So yes, we are pressing our colleagues for that.
Is it that they haven't finished it, or is it that the executive hasn't agreed it?
I'm not sure where it is. I think that's a matter for TO to respond to.
Yeah, that's fair enough. It is fair to say that this would, I'm not putting words in your mouth, you can correct me if this is wrong, this would be more focused as a multi-year budget if there's an investment strategy alongside it.
I mean, I think that's fair to say. I think that if we had an agreed programme for government and an agreed investment strategy sitting alongside each other as we went into the budget setting process, it would be helpful. Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to come in on that point, Brian?
On a separate point, is that okay?
Okay, I'll come back to you in a second. Okay, and then another question from me. So we can. It's fair to say that there will be a multi-year budget with or without an investment strategy. Ideally, you would have an investment strategy sitting alongside it. But in a sense, this document, in the same way that budgets in the past have been de facto programmes for government, this might end up becoming a de facto investment strategy, because it will have to provide resources for the A5 and other major strategic projects. Okay, the PSTB, which is a subject of much discussion in this committee, round 2 is currently operating at the minute. Is that right? Or they've gone out for 10 or bids for round 2 of the public sector transformation board. Is that right? Yes. No. I'm not sure it's Aidan or Jeff.
It's not. It's probably not in any of our slates
Right.
at this point in time. But I do know that they've went out for round 2, and that's ongoing. Yeah.
And are they going to ask for another tranche of transformation money like that? For example, is the NIO bidding for this, or are you asking the NIO to bid for more transformation money? Are you aware?
My understanding is that there is still money in the transformation pot that was unused from round 1, and that will be the funding that will be used in round 2.
Yeah, there was 235 million was from the financial package, and 129 of that was allocated toward projects back in March.
Okay. Brian, you want to come in?
Okay, 2 questions. In terms of how many years this budget is for, if I hear you right, it's 3 years resource, 4 years capital, and based on 5-year capital or departmental plans. Is that right?
Yes, the funding envelope provided by the Treasury is a further 3 years resource and 4 years capital, and that's the thing that restricts us in terms of what we plan in our actual budget. But alongside that, departments will be doing those kind of longer term financial sustainability plans which stretch over 5 years. Now, obviously there's a good overlap between those two, but that's, yeah, you're right.
How many years we label it as, so maybe we just stick with multi-year. And I do want to ask about the fact that this is extending into the next Assembly mandate. I don't know what happens at Westminster, whether this sort of longer term planning would be done at this scale, or in terms of our political arrangements here, and the fact that we have a mandatory coalition through power sharing that most parties will be bought into. Does that make it actually more possible to do this sort of planning? Equally, no government can tie the hands of a future government, so we are talking about financial commitments then in the next mandate for the executive there. Just how much certainty will departments and the public have about the financial plans made in this multi-year?
I think our Minister and other executive colleagues have been very clear that putting in place multi-year budgets is a really important stepping stone for us, where we're providing financial certainty going forward. You're right, whenever that steps across a mandate, there is the ability for an incoming executive to rewrite or adjust those plans, and that there's a, if they want to do that, that is their right to do. But I don't think that should get in the way of establishing a multi-year budget now that provides as much certainty as possible in terms of capital planning, understanding that kind of longer term piece for resource as well. So, the executive committed to implementing multi-year budgets where possible as part of the budget sustainability plan, and that's kind of the trajectory we're going on. But in recognition that a new incoming government could change that, there is the option for them to reopen it at that stage.
Mm-hmm. But the fact that by and large the same parties will be in the executive hopefully provides a bit more certainty than might be the case elsewhere. That's a political question.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're definitely going to be okay. I think the point to make is obviously that they can make decisions within the headroom. It'll still be within the headroom of the spending review given by the Treasury in June. They can't, a new executive, even if it's composed in a slightly different way, can't. Just on the point about revenue raising again, the executive, remind us just of the amount of revenue raising. Someone has made some points about the revenue raising exercise that was contained in the budget sustainability plan, but there was a requirement to raise revenue of over 2 years of 213, no?
113 million over 2 years.
113, sorry, it was 113 over 2 years, which has now been delivered effectively. That was over
24, 25 and 25, 26.
As in it's been delivered, as in it has been implemented in the two budgets. Well, whether every penny has been collected yet, the decisions have been taken.
Yes. I mean, we did an update with departments in August, and we're estimating just over 135 million of new additional revenue over that period.
Right. Is that in this? Is that in the documents you've given us, or is that that's new information?
No, that's just something.
So that's 130. That's 135. Now, one comment people had made, and by people I mean me, was that lots of the revenue that was raised was not exactly, to put it mildly, particularly materially new decisions. It didn't require ministerial decisions too, for example, with the exception of obviously increase in rates. There was lots of things like increases in ordnance survey charges, increases in fees that were just effectively what I think what is called in taxation valorization, the kind of or indexation, kind of the charge rising with inflation, and that was counted. Is there anything in this 135 million that is new, as in a new charge of any kind?
No, they're all in that same package. Yeah. We provided details as part of the budget sustainability plan. One of the issues that we had at that stage was that that was very much time bound. So implementing new or kind of novel revenue raising would require going through the legislative process, and by the time we'd had it implemented, we'd have missed the target deadline from Treasury.
Yeah. But we're now in a situation where the revenue raising, whether the specific revenue rate, the specific idea is good or ill, it doesn't look like we are, if I'm understanding you correctly, that there's any specific commitment to do that for this multi-year budget, so that the executive is not currently planning to say, well, this is our headroom over the next this is the headroom we have over the next 3 years in resource, 4 years in capital. We're not satisfied with that. We want to raise additional revenue, either using existing powers that we have or by seeking, per a fiscal framework discussion, new powers to raise new revenue in specific areas, because we want to add 50, 100, 500 million, 5 billion to our spending power in a given year or over the course of the forecast. I think it's fair to say that's not going to happen.
So, part of that strategic income review will be to provide the executive with that kind of range of, here are the options available to you, and should they wish to implement those, they can then do that as part of either multi-year budget or beyond, depending on how long it takes to implement.
Well, this is not a statement meant at you, Jeff, or indeed Aidan or officials, because I think I'm sure you're providing very robust advice. There's no clarity from my perspective that the executive is going to make that decision, or is minded to make that decision, or the finance minister wants them to make that decision, because if you look at where the UK government, I mean, whatever you think about this UK government, and there are lots of legitimate criticisms, and all governments, including in Dublin, who are there about to do a budget next week, they make decisions on increasing, decreasing their revenue within weeks. The executive is now 18 months in, and it's still having discussions about potential future reviews. That's more a statement than a question, but I don't think it's credible that they are in any way minded to do anything significant on revenue raising or fiscal devolution, because I think we would have heard it by now. But all we've heard, and this is again a statement, not a question, is discussions about discussions and potential future reviews and strategic review cycles of decades, if not lifetimes. So I don't see any evidence that we're going to see any meaningful revenue raising or fiscal devolution. And I think that's regrettable to the extent that it means that there's not going to be as much ambition as perhaps people would like. But that's a statement from me. Are there any other questions before we release some but not all of these officials?
No, they're all going.
Oh, they're all going? Okay. Well, in that case, there's lots I've probably forgotten to ask, but thank you for giving us that update, both on the departmental side and the broader budget plans, for 5 year, multi-year budget plans. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hey folks, agenda item 9 is another oral briefing. I don't think we have any particular follow-ups from that. We're going to have more, certainly, obviously, that we will have a multi-year budget. That's really to give us a sense of where things are on preparations for the multi-year budget, both broadly and for the department. Okay, agenda item 9 is Outturn and forecast Outturn data, which is an oral briefing from the department members. There are background papers for this session beginning at 287 of the meeting pack, including Outturn and forecast Outturn data for June, July, August, which were previously provided to the committee. Officials are attending today to provide further information and clarification in relation to the 3-month data on the usual 4 expenditure categories. as well as and overcommitments and variances. So we have joining us, I think, in a few minutes.
Yes.
Maryann and Emer.
Here they come.
Yes. Yes, good. Very massively big folders there, archives, like sort of good to see. Okay, so thank you for want to see us. We've been patient, particularly the Deputy Chair, who was one of the initial requesters of this information, and it's looked very useful that we get it on a monthly basis, but this is our first opportunity to ask questions and interrogate about it on a having had 3 months, effectively a summer's worth of data. So I don't know if Emer or Maryann wants to give us an opening statement.
Okay, I will, yes.
And obviously members as always indicate if you want to ask a question.
Okay, Chair. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to come and speak to the committee today. You will have received the latest Outturn and forecast Outturn on the 16th of September. The information provided is the latest Outturn and forecast Outturn, and it's based on returns from departments that we received on the 8th of September, setting out the August position. The next returns are due on the 8th of November, and they'll set out the September position. Departments are currently forecasting overcommitments in non-ring-fenced resource DEL of 733.5 million, ring-fenced resource DEL of 8.6 million, and capital. Again,
sorry, Maryann, just to crystallise them for the record. I think it's useful. So, and this is where we are now. So this is the most recent data we have on resource DEL. It's
733.5 million. Ring-fenced resource DEL of 8.6 million and capital DEL of 20.9 million. Adjusting for an anticipated budget cover transfer reduces the overall DEL overcommitment to a total of 686.3. So that's the 733.5 down to 686.3. The committee will be aware, however, that reporting overcommitments is designed to increase transparency. It does not give departments permission to overspend. Departments are expected to have plans in place to manage overcommitments down over the course of the financial year to ensure that they live within the budget allocated to them and is agreed by the Executive. The committee has been provided with the information departments provided on the actions that they will take to manage their overcommitments. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, thank you for giving us that. Obviously, members indicate should you wish to ask a question. Just first of all, from me, give us a sense of basically £600 million overcommitment in resource, like thereabouts when you include the budget transfer mitigations. Where is that compared to? I know there's no such thing as normal or average, but we're basically halfway through. We're about nearly in October monitoring, and perhaps you can give us an indication of if and when we're going to get October monitoring, presumably in October, but whether this is a large relative kind of global picture of overcommitment for this stage of the year.
Yeah, well, Chair, the overcommitment started in May at 1104.8 million resource DEL, so it's come down by 371.3 million to the 733, and then the additional Barnett cover transfer bringing it down to the 686. Yep. Departments are working on it, and obviously, you know, as I say, it's a transparent budget tool that they know they must manage over the course of the year and have plans in place to make that happen. In terms of an October monitoring round, the guidance said that we would have one in June and one in January, and if we needed another, we would have it. So the October monitoring round is currently being considered in terms of timing and scope, obviously with the autumn budget now being announced for the 26th of November.
There may not be one.
It's under consideration.
Is it? Okay. Yeah, well, interested to hear that. So, but if it's under consideration, then it might not happen. Anyway, well, I think I won't push you to say any more than that. In relation to the in-year position in general, is it fair to say that, based on what we can observe in terms of the public sector finances in London, that it is much less likely that there's going to be in-year Barnetts from London, which we have kind of grown quite used to over the last number of years. Last financial year, for example, there were a lot of in-year Barnett consequences. Obviously, during the COVID years, there were loads too, for very specific reasons. It doesn't looking at the headline picture, certainly the mood music, what's coming from the ONS in terms of the public sector finance, it doesn't look like there's going to be much by way of in-year barn. Is that what you're getting?
Yeah, we wouldn't expect the significant sums that we have received in previous years. I suppose the Chancellor also sort of at the beginning sort of said that they would try and give as much in the initial process, and there would be less expected in year then.
Okay. In relation to, so you've talked about overcommitment, £700 million overcommitment in resource. What is the single biggest driver of the overcommitment in resource?
By department, the biggest overcommitments are in health and in education at the moment. So health is 413.2 million of an overcommitment, and education 279.3.
And how much of that is pay? How much of the overcommitment is pay in health?
My understanding is it's around about 200 million.
200 million of the 400 million is pay,
Yes.
so only about half. And what's the balance then? Is it? I would have thought pay would have.
It's a range of things now. Do you have that to hand?
I think it's mostly to do with pressures in the health trusts.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see if we can get that.
Okay, that's okay. And on the capital side, we are at a £20 million pressure on capital.
Yes.
I presume that's going to be eased by the fact that there's going to be a pretty vast reduced requirement on the A5.
Well, the capital now is, as you say, it's overcommitted by 20 million. That's across DERA, DFC and DOF. DERA has 8.9 million. The DFC overcommitment is 5.8 and DOF's is 6.2 million. Each of those departments have plans in place to manage those overcommitments. The A5 then is a ring-fenced flagship amount would have to be returned. And DFI haven't given us any further information about what will be returned at this stage.
In the return we got from the department, it said that the amount. It would be helpful if you could, if you have the numbers. If you don't, just that's fine, because it might not be. But the number that was so the budget 25-26 had 181 million.
Yes.
As the amount allocated for this year. The amount we now understand to be a live kind of allocation that hasn't been. So some of that was already reallocated in June monitoring.
Yes, so
it was already reported as a reduced requirement.
Yep.
It's now sitting at about 90. Is that right?
Correct. That's right. So of the 180 odd million, some of that was money from the Irish government.
Yeah.
So the executives
It doesn't score as a reduced requirement. It just sits there as
wouldn't be drawn down from the Irish government as such. So there was 12 million of which was given as a reduced requirement in June monitoring, leaving about 90 million.
Yeah.
And as I say, DFI have not given us information as to where that sits at the moment. In terms of reduced requirement.
I mean, it's right to say that basically, in relation to the question about the need for an October monitoring, there's quite a big potential capital reduced requirement that you might need to reduce, that you might use in an October monitoring. Because if you get to January, as we all know, finding somewhere to spend £90 million of capital in January is pretty difficult.
Yeah. Well, I think that would be part of the consideration of when and the timing and scope of an October monitoring round.
Basically, because you need to find a way to reallocate the underspend on the A5.
And outcome of AB and other departmental reduced requirements, so there'd be a number of considerations. Yeah,
that is one. Yeah. Because you need, and if you wait until January, you face the prospect of not being able to because it's too big to be switched. You can't. You couldn't just switch it into current because it needs to be a much smaller percentage. What is the percentage of very small percentage you can?
No, you can't do capital to resource switches.
Is there not? There is some mechanism by which you can. But anyway, it's immaterial because you can't do it with this.
Yep.
Okay, that's helpful. Owen Tennyson. No, not Owen Tennyson. Deputy Chair. Sorry. The Outturn forecast, Outturn data is very important to the Deputy Chair who has been leading the way on it, so it would be very rude of me if I skipped over her accidentally. Go ahead, Dan.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks both for coming here today. And just as you said, Maryann, earlier on in the year when the overcommitments, they were sitting over £1 billion, now they're down to 733, as you said, that one element of it. Do you think that the departments are being, realistic in what they're saying, or are they
They provide us the information of their plans as such, which we've shared with you, and it's really down to each minister to manage their budget. They know that the overcommitment is just that, a tool, a transparency tool, but it is up to them to have plans in place and make the decisions necessary to live within budget.
Yeah, and it's good to see it in this way, because then you can see it moving month on month. And
Yeah.
I did note that I think it was from May to June there was quite a big reduction in the Department of Health for the Health Trust realising their savings, something about like £200 million. Do you get involved in that process when they come back and ask any questions around it, or you just take the figures?
Did you get involved?
I think the supply would.
Yeah, yes. So the supply officers obviously work with each department, and they would interrogate the returns as they come in to make sure they are realistic.
Yeah, and it's just because sometimes I work closely with the Southern Trust there, and the trusts are doing a lot of work to try to make actual savings within their organisation. So it's just good that it's captured and recognised somewhere that the trusts have been doing that work within the wider departmental landscape there. In a recent briefing, Neil Gibson had said to us about October monitoring round, and he said just very clearly to anyone that was there that it's not going to be an October monitoring round necessarily of bids for what you want. It could be an October monitoring round just to realign, as you say, budgets unspent or cuts. Do you think that all departments are clear on that, or is there still an expectation that money's coming from somewhere late in the year?
Well, I think we have been clear. Obviously, there's an autumn budget coming. The expectation is that we won't get anything like we got in previous years in terms of significant funding. There are the overcommitments that they all have to manage. So I think that they are aware of that fact and know that they have to manage within what they've got.
Thank you. And within the briefing here, it notes the Department of Justice's overcommitment, but also notes that the exceptional pressures around PSNI data breach, holiday pay and McLeod are estimated at around £227 million and are excluded due to uncertainties. Have you got any indication of an estimated timing? Are we talking about things starting to crystallise within a year, within the next 3 years spending? Have you any indication of that?
PSNI data breach is likely to crystallise this year, and the minister, our finance minister, has written to the CST to request, because that we have access to the reserve for that, because we believe that the it falls under the criteria for access to the Treasury Reserve. The holiday pay and the McLeod judgment, it looks more likely to fall into next year or following years after that.
And we had mentioned that this in the reserves earlier in the committee, just in separate correspondence. Has there been any response? Have you got anything back from Treasury for clarity on any of these things?
Not as yet.
Okay, it's very concerning, just especially as you say with that one hitting this particular financial year. Scroll down here. I had noted as well, you have got there the forecast underspend in ring fence resource dale, £14.3 million, and you're saying about being able to address requirements in other areas. Is that quite flexible? Can that be applied
ring
to
fence resource dale, that can only be used for depreciation and impairments, so it can only be used. So I think departments are reporting overcommitments about 8.6 million at the moment. So obviously with a monitoring in the next monitoring round, any reduced requirements from other departments could be reallocated there.
Just getting it rearranged and tidying up and things. But no, thank you very much, and thanks for setting this out. I think it's really, really helpful to have it in this way. Thank you.
Okay, Owen Tennyson.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Maryann, for your answers so far. Just looking at the two departments that are carrying significant overcommitments and have a significant portion of those arising as a result of public sector pay, why is it that Department of Education and Department of Health are having pressures around pay when other departments have been able to address those in year? Is there a particular issue that's driving that?
Not that I'm aware of. That will be, for the department and the minister in each department to manage his budget how he sees fit. So that would really be a question for the departments
themselves. Yeah, and my understanding is from the Department of Finance guidance. So typically, when there's a monitoring round or there's a budget being established, there'll obviously be a baseline, and public sector pay should always be included in that baseline, and bids then should be for additional funding above and beyond.
Whatever it places,
has that happened in all instances, or is there a variance from what the department can see and how different departments have approached that?
Well, we can only see what's reported to us and what they're telling us as such, you know. So I as I say, it's really one for the department and the basis of how they've managed their budgets.
No, that's fair enough. Thank you. All right. Anyway, Maryann, thank you.
Just on the pay rise. So that, I mean, there was a bit of an exchange in the chamber yesterday between the finance minister and Colin McGrath about the about health workers' pay. I think the minister said, and I'm quoting him here from Hansard, we will this is about the current pay dispute with healthcare staff, and it said, the minister said, we will reach a successful conclusion to the issue and health workers will get their pay rise, which is pretty definitive. Now, that pay rise is in addition to the 200 million of pressure that already exists within the department, because the department, if it hasn't, this would be, that 200 million would be covering the pay rise that the department are, okay. So we can assume then that if the minister's saying yesterday that is going to be agreed, then that £200 million will be dealt with when? In October monitoring? January monitoring?
Again, discussions are ongoing on that, and you know, decisions will have to be made on the timing of that, but that's in a political sphere at this stage.
Fair enough. But he has made that commitment that's one part of one pressure that he is finding a way to resolve. We don't know yet, and we don't know if how that's being resolved, but he has been fairly clear about that. Okay, that's helpful. In terms of what you've been hearing from the Treasury, did you want to come back in?
No, just want to say.
In terms of what you've been hearing from the Treasury, have there been any additional barnets since, or notification of any potential barnets since June?
No, we would be waiting for any announcements as part of the autumn budget. We haven't actually.
Sometimes you will get other, an announcement will make, and they might say, by the way, this is going to come as a barnet, and you can start to factor in.
We're not that I'm aware of.
Nothing like that, okay. And have you had a sense, to go back to earlier questions about how tight it is, or they say it is, have you had a sense that there's, that it could be completely flat, there's not going to be anything additional, maybe even a negative barnet in some, have you having anything like that?
No, not through channels other than what's well publicised.
Yeah. Right.
To be honest, yeah.
Okay, Brian Kingston.
Hey, Chair, thanks for your information so far. So, I'm not asking you to do the job of a minister or make political comments, but compared to other years, how would you see the current situation in terms of the overcommitments? I get the idea that you have to at least plan, for other projects that could be delivered if funding becomes available, or other things don't go ahead as planned. But I'm trying to get a picture of what is the practical outworkings of this when it gets towards the end of the year. What will be the consequences of these overcommitments?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously staff have to be paid, and there's essential services have to be paid. Does this end up some sort of paper exercise, or do we end up with projects being frozen or cancelled?
Well, I think it must be maybe 3 years now that we've been running with an overcommitment, or allowing departments to show an overcommitment. Now, in showing the overcommitment, they also have to have like a balancing line, so that the budget comes in as balanced. The idea of the overcommitment line is to show the pressures the departments are dealing with internally, and for them then to work out what actions and decisions need to be taken to manage that overcommitment down over the period of the year. So it's only a transparency tool, as opposed to a permission to overspend in any way. So I mean, each ministry, each department is well aware that they should come in with a balanced budget. So it's a tool for transparency as opposed to permission to overspend.
Well, is it things that the minister would like to do if the budget becomes available?
No, it's actions that they need to take to manage that overcommitment down over the period of the year, so that they come in with a balanced budget. So at the beginning of the year, they mightn't have been able to take all the decisions that they need to take throughout the year, or to put in place over the year to make the savings needed to manage that overcommitment down.
Right. And well, again, without pushing you to make ministerial decisions. I mean, do you see the current position as manageable in terms of previous experience of how years go?
Yeah, it's similar to previous years, as far, without the figures in front of me. We've run this overcommitment type scenario for a number of years now, and we've managed balanced budgets in the last number of years as well as a result. So I don't see why this would be different.
Alarm bells aren't ringing as such.
Not that not in terms of process. No.
Okay, thank you.
I think it's just worth saying the overcommitment, the resource del overcommitment forecast last year was 791 million, so it was almost exactly the same.
Yeah.
Which is, I'm not sure it's reassuring, but it's at least contextualizes it. Okay. Yeah, and I think the fact that we're able to monitor and understand this stuff, isn't the fact, I suppose my one question might be, and maybe this is more of a thematic question, one might have expected that, well, we're back in, 2024 was less than a calendar year after restoration when there had been a collapse, although it was whatever 9 or 10 months after a restoration, and there was a new financial year in the middle. But that now that we're into a full year, we've had one full financial year. We've had a multi-year budget in June, albeit that hasn't yet been factored into long-term planning here. Shouldn't we start to see those kind of overcommitments? Isn't the idea that those overcommitments should come down because they are partly a product of lack of medium-term certainty?
Potentially, Chair, over the multi-year spending review, the idea is that departments are able to plan, over a longer period of time, and having more certainty that they're able to make plans. So you could see that sort of thing happening over a multi-year period, yeah.
Okay. And just in relation to guidance that may or may not have gone out, so obviously a lot is happening in terms of the multi-year piece and the multi-year budgets at the end of the year. Has there been guidance so if there's going to be an October monitoring exercise, there has to be a process of asking for bids. Correct. Has that happened?
No, not as yet. The commissioning note has not gone out because, as I say, there's still decisions and consideration about the timing and scope.
Right. Okay. How long does it normally take to commission? What would be the normal timeline?
It could be 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah. Right. Okay. It would need to be decided fairly quickly. Can the minister decide not to do an October monitoring without executive approval? He can just decide he's not going to, or does he need the executive to decide that he doesn't have to?
No, I think as I say, the guidance at the beginning of the year said there would be one in June and one in January, and another one in year depending on necessity. Right. So, there might be a scenario where the minister decides to wait to see the outcome of the autumn budget.
Okay.
For instance.
Yeah, okay, so that's interesting. I think that's interesting for us. It would be really helpful. No members have indicated they have any further questions. Thank you for that. That was informative. I think the key things that were informative were, one, scale of the overcommitments, but with contextualising, it's important for us to do that. That certainly relates to last year. It's not hideously out with that, but also we don't yet know whether there's going to be an October monitoring round, and we also don't know what is going to happen with the £90 million reduced requirement on the A5, given the commitment on pay, given this significant reduced requirement on A5. It would appear judicious maybe to have a monitoring round, but we don't know if we're going to get one or when. But you've clarified that in a very professional civil service way, so we appreciate that. I think we're finished. Thank you very much. Right. Thanks, Emer. Thanks, Maryann. Right. It would be helpful, obviously, to keep abreast if there is going to be a monitoring round.
Chair, we've got a standing flag up. The department has acknowledged it will send us the commissioning note as soon as that goes out. I've communicated to other committees as well that the commissioning note has not yet gone out, so we're still in a process of waiting. But as officials have indicated, you can call it the October monitoring round, but you don't have to have it in October. That's just sort of a convenient, usual sort of period. So officials have already suggested that potentially the minister might want to wait until after the budget announcement on the 26th of November, which then adds further complication to timescales.
You can have Halloween at Christmas, basically.
Yes, essentially.
Okay, right. I think we're going to get our main update is to get an update on all of those things. We've already asked for the update on A5.
Yeah, that's already been read out.
And that's okay. That's great. Okay, agenda item 10. If members are content to move on, agenda item 10 is on land registration legislation. It's the land registration legislation consultation. I really want some more Asians in there to just to test my ability to say them. Consultation launch, written briefing, and this is a written briefing from the department. At page 425 of the meeting pack, there's a written briefing from the department on the launch of the land registration legislation project consultation, which will open on the 13th of October and run for 13 weeks. A copy of the consultation document and draft legislation has been provided to the committee. This is part of the transformation programme to deliver changes to LPS to implement new digital integrated solutions for all LPS business areas. The land registration implementation project will be responsible for delivering the new digital solution for land registry. Amongst other improvements for users, there will be online payments, an elimination of paper processes and automation. The land registration project will make the required legislative changes to allow rollout. Secondary legislation will come into operation before summer 26, allowing for the rollout to begin before October 26. So members, this is really just to discuss. We've been sent this to discuss. I think it's it certainly appears interesting, and does any member wish to offer any comment or observation on it? The only thing I suppose I would ask, for the purposes of information further to what we've said, does the department forecasting or expecting any income to any potential benefit in terms of income? Savings.
I'm trying to think if we had the savings quantified. I don't think we have fully, but that's something that we'll seek update on in due course.
Even if it's material, if it's people who are paying quicker, or or people who are paying who might otherwise not pay, that seems implausible. But I think it would be helpful to find that out. Otherwise, if members are content, we'll move on. Okay, correspondence at 11. There is correspondence. 11.1 is public income and expenditure account for year ending 31st of March. Oh, Jerry, did you want to come in on that last point?
Yeah.
You want to come in on the land registration legislation consultation?
Yeah, sorry, I came in later. 1 second onto the item. I know it's going to consultation, and I had to look through the document, but has there been a company awarded the contract as far as we know, or it's just early stages?
I think it's just a consultation so far. I think it's a consultation on what they want to do, and I don't know if they would actually even. We can ask the question about whether they anticipate having to procure a service.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Charlie. Whether it can be done in house or whether it's external, and if it's external, sort of who's being considered. But that's the only question I had. But thanks.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. Definitely reasonable for us to ask that question, whether they plan to procure anything. Okay. Happy enough with that. We will then move on to agenda item 11, which is correspondence. 11.1, as I said, is public income and expenditure account for year ending 31st of March 25. That has been laid in the Assembly, just for members to note. Yeah. So page 496, and if anybody wishes to make a remark. Onto the tabled pack is the Minister of Finance's annual progress report to the Equality Commission. Page 34 of the table pack is the Department's annual progress report on the implementation of its equality scheme and Section 75 duties. That's to note, unless anybody wishes to share.
Yeah, just within that, just wanted to put on record, I was disappointed just at the renewal of the contract with Stonewall, who've been widely discredited, as was announced in the Chamber, although in follow-up questions it's just been for a year, so I'm just be keen to keep an eye on that. There's a range of organisations that could be considered there, and just disappointed in the roll forward of that one.
Okay, but that remark, I think it's worth putting on the record that I think lots of people would dispute that depiction of Stonewall, but you're entitled to Deputy Chair to put that view on the record. I think my own engagement with Stonewall over the years has been that they've been a hugely important charity and campaign group, and they provided lots of really important guidance and solidarity for particularly LGBT people working in the public and indeed the private sectors. So I think it's worth putting that on the record. But others want to come in. Owen Tennyson.
Yeah, just to briefly associate myself with your view on this, Chair, I think it is a welcome appointment. I mean, often we hear this attempt to stir up culture wars around diversity, equality and inclusion, or to present that in some way as it's a waste of money. I would say look around in Northern Ireland. It's probably an area that we don't invest enough in, given the trends that we've seen in hate crime and other issues and the challenges that marginalised and minority groups face in our society. So I don't want this to descend into a political issue. At the Finance Committee, we should be looking at the finances, but I think it is important that that is on record, that the Finance Committee's view is not reflective of the Deputy Chair of the Committee.
Okay, Jerry, you want to come in?
Yeah, just briefly as well, I concur with Owen and yourself, Chair. I mean, I do think it's remarkable. Just given the Deputy Chair obviously raised the issue, but both she and her party colleagues have no problem actually push back at any criticism or scrutiny of Fujitsu getting public money. That's great, that's fine, and there's no problem on her end for Fujitsu, but a group that's providing really essential LGBT support services and support networks for public sector workers and everybody else is somehow in the firing line. So I think with respect to the Deputy Chair, I think she should be focusing on elsewhere rather than Stonewall.
Okay. Deputy Chair, wish to come back in.
And just as I respect the fact that Jerry often puts his views on the record, I'm entitled to put mine on.
Okay, I think views have been put on the record robustly and respectfully. I certainly put mine on the record, and I think we'll move on to the next agenda item. Having done that, the position's been made clear. Okay, the next agenda item is another bit of correspondence, which is the ESR report. But there are no rules. It's on page 122 if you wish to look at it, but there are no rules for us. So it's only for noting. Agenda item 12 is a draft forward work programme. That is at page 531 of the pack, members. And we obviously have a lot coming up. We've got 2 bills that we are scrutinising. We have lots of other things for the clerk. I'm going to talk us through.
Really just to highlight to members that we are in the process of organising oral evidence sessions for the 2 bills. Those are starting to fall into place, and hopefully in the next few weeks we'll be able to give more concrete information about who is coming, when they're coming, and so on. But members will recall that we wrote to specific stakeholder groups, and we're now sort of contacting them to bring them in for the various briefings on the 2 bills. So hopefully by next week and the week after we'll have a lot more detail.
Yeah, indeed, we've got lots to do. There's not actually a huge amount next week, but we're okay. Great, Deputy Chair.
Yeah, just given the lots of things coming up, do we anticipate any 1 p.m. starts coming up? I just wanted to flag them if there were.
Not at the minute. We've been quite excited that for the last 2 weeks we've managed.
Don't get used to
normal 2 p.m. starts, but we do kind of hold it in reserve. Now, the one I can flag up, just as I'm thinking when I say that, is on the 22nd. We are looking at a 12:30 start for our strategy session around the inquiry. But we will provide lunch on that one, and that one's in the PDR private dining room. So
there's one other point, just on the LCM and the Public Office and Accountability Bill. Are we content that enough's coming through on that, just given the issue on LCMs?
Interestingly, I've been just in the world of wonderful electronic communication in touch with the official. So the scheduling for second reading of that is now likely to look like the last week in October or the first week in November. So the department will have done its round robin out to the other departments now that it's proceeded to this stage in terms of whether or not they have any issues. As always, Chair, with an LCM, there will be a need for executive discussion around whether or not there's support for the Minister to bring forward the legislative consent memorandum. However, members will recall that under 42A4B, and I never thought I would be that person, but I now am, the Minister can bring forward a memorandum indicating that he is not at that position yet, and that they will provide any further information they can around the bill and where discussions might be and the impact locally on the devolved dispensation. So I think that's pretty much where we are now, is the department's deciding how it wants to proceed with that. But I know they've gone out to the other departments to seek views. Probably also worth reminding members, Chair, that with these LCMs, there isn't always a useful period of engagement with Whitehall counterparts prior to the introduction of the bill, and I suspect, well, no, I shouldn't speculate at all, but that has been a big challenge in the past, where Whitehall suddenly decides they haven't necessarily scoped out the potential for the bill to impact. And obviously, as we discussed previously, there are some special considerations with this bill as well, in terms of how Westminster has legislated previously, where the sort of provisions behind this bill have been rolled out in specific areas. This is now a wider rollout, and how we would necessarily want to take that forward. So those discussions are all still very live, but members will be reassured that officials are all over that, and we should be getting much more concrete information in the weeks to come.
And we are, whenever we have our strategic planning day, which is
specifically for the inquiry, Chair.
Specifically, okay, that's interesting. And that's where we're going to discuss civil service reform, including sickness and including the hybrid working stuff. Okay, great. We have a plan, exactly, and lots of interesting people we can talk to about that.
Absolutely.
Okay, members, if members are happy enough with that, and obviously, so there will be lots of oral briefings. So the lots is being scheduled. So thanks to the committee, obviously we were very delighted to get our banking report launched, and we've completed our scrutiny on the death and stillbirths registration bill. Okay, so members will publish their...
Just before we move on from that, just to alert members that we will bring back details and remind you on the things that are going to be happening in next week and the week after around Baby Loss Awareness Month. We'll keep up those reminders, and we'll try and keep members well informed so that we can get as many members to each event as we possibly can. Great.
Okay. Thank you. Now, members have agreed we'll publish the forward work programme on the committee webpage. Agenda item 13, any other business? The only any other business I had was to ask, and I should have done it earlier in the meeting, was if we've heard anything back yet, and it's further to our civil service work, we've heard anything back yet in the head of civil service?
No, that is now in the process. It is gone to the executive office, but as members will be aware, with the dual role of that office, things can take that little bit longer to get fully processed.
Does it require the first and deputy first minister offices to sign off us getting information about the head of the civil service?
I would imagine so, Chair. And anything that's sent as a letter, because the letter has gone to both the first and deputy first ministers, it's one of those things. No matter what it is, if it's into the process, it goes through the process.
We may want to come back to this next week. I just think personally I'm slightly concerned now. We've got a little bit of time because in a sense this is part of our civil service inquiry work, but I'm ever so slightly worried if we get into a situation where we need to get information from the executive office on important civil service stuff, and it's going into that washing machine and just never coming out.
So we're not over time yet on it, so we're
okay.
still good within
That's helpful. That's helpful. I just think it's important just to say, hang on, I'll bring in a second, Steve. I think it's really important to say this is going to be a really important inquiry for us, and it's really important. The RHI scheme, certainly the financial bit of it, was wound up. I'm hearing the echo of my voice. We need the executive office. If anyone there is listening or pass it on, we need them to play ball with us in terms of, I'm not saying they aren't yet, but in terms of giving us timely information on civil service matters, because while they have clearly a big virus in terms of the head of the civil service, it's this committee that has to scrutinise civil service performance and reform, and that's what we intend to do. Steve Aiken.
Yeah, just Chair, just apologies, just to declare a declaration of interest. I've got an AQW in with the TEO's office about terms of reference, and also particularly about performance-related pay and how it's laid out, and who is the particular reporting officer to whom. I just wanted to lay that out there.
I don't think that's a conflict, but it's on the record anyway. But it's now noted. Okay, thank you, Steve.
Good.
Right. Okay, members, if there's no other business, we'll just finalise with date, time and place of next meeting. The next meeting is here on Wednesday, 8th of October, 2 p.m. in the Senate chamber. I'm going to put the question to the committee. Do now adjourn. The committee's now adjourned. Thank you.